everyone. Welcome to All Access Art, episode 4. Today we're talking about framing and display for your art. So, we've talked about buying art, and we've talked about tracking your art, and now, we need to talk about arguably the most important thing, which is putting that art up on the wall so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. So, and as always, remember that if you have any questions from today's show, if you have any topics that you want to see covered, go to the link below the video, click the Google Drive link, the Google form, and fill that out. And your question might be featured in a future show. So I have two super cool guests today, a couple of my magic art collecting buddies who were more than gracious to volunteer to shoot. We are shooting on the 4th of July. So, and hopefully early enough in the day that we don't hear any crazy fireworks in the background. So thank you so much both for being here. So I'm going to introduce both of them. So Steve Nam. So Steve's art collecting journey began with woodblock prints in the early 2000s. He eventually branched out to original comic art, then original fantasy and sci-fi art. His collection includes a Frazetta painting, cover art for part 1 of the Planet of the Symbiotes arc that inspired the first Venom movie, Dungeons and Dragons Endless Quest cover art by Jeff Easley, Marvel art by the big names of the 90s, early Magic art by Quentin Hoover and Jesper Myfors, and so on. He swears by his framer, Mr. Kurata, who's a short walk away from him in San Francisco. And secondly, we have Brenden. Brenden's art collecting began in 2017. His collection includes Magic the Gathering paintings of his favorite cards, which are often featuring nature and greenery, which is very different from my collection. In 2021, he took up a COVID hobby he'd have never expected, which was making custom themed frames. So we're going to be talking about that today. His frames are anything but traditional, often including programmable LEDs and made from unconventional materials like foam, acrylic tubing, cactus, polymer clay, and copper pipes, or sometimes just exotic wood. That said, he also appreciates classic framing styles. That choice just depends on whether a unique frame idea comes to him. He also has an unexplainable love for fillets. Well, gentlemen, welcome so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
So, before we jump in, I did mention it was 4th of July, and Brenden, you mentioned right before the show that you programmed one of your LEDs to do red, white, and blue lights for 4th of July.
I did. Yes, it's in the background. I was able to go edit it. It's this blue LEDs back here.
Okay.
But, I turned off the 4th of July, but I can actually probably change it at a whim here. Let's see if I can go in.
Framing of the future. Let me just go change those lights real quick.
I've been over at Brenden's place a few times, so
let's see. There it is.
Amazing.
Yeah, there it is. 4th of July. It turns rainbow on my kids' birthdays and Christmassy on Christmas, all that stuff.
See, so your wife can never complain about your art because you're like, look, honey, I'm decorating for the holidays.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again both for joining me today. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm super excited because I'm kind of a, historically I've been kind of a traditionalist with framing. I've just kind of always gone to a framer. I've recently started diving a little bit into thrifting and things, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And Brenden, I remember when you started this hobby, it was like, okay, guys, I'm going to do this thing. We all thought you were a little nuts, but then you proved to be incredibly talented and resourceful in doing this. So I'm really excited to share that with everyone today. But the first thing I wanted to ask is, I know for some people might think, well, you get a piece of art, you bring it home, you put it on the wall. For those of you, looking at Brenden's screen, and you can see behind him, and we'll share the actual photo later so you can see what the full wall looks like when he's not sitting in front of it. A lot of us collect a lot of art, and when you have a lot of art, you don't necessarily have an immediate place to put it on the wall, or might not be able to always immediately put things on the wall. So my first question to the two of you is, how do you decide which pieces in your collection are going up on the wall?
So basically, My answer might jive well with the wife and kids cohort of collectors, those with wife and kids. In my case, it's a bit of a calculus. So I have to think about, let's say I have about 90, close to 100 pieces. I have to think about what works on the wall in the sense that it's not too violent. That takes away a lot of my pieces already with a lot of action and combat. And stuff that is not overtly sexual, which also carves away a good chunk of pieces. So that leaves works that that are kind of, have impact. I like color on the walls. Obviously, that's not the case with a lot of comic art, but impact is good. Something that's family friendly, and yet at the same time, it's going to kind of evoke good feelings, good emotions. Anytime I walk by, because a lot of my art is kind of it's on the hallway, the kind of the walls in the hallways. So lighting is really good there. So basically, it has to check all these boxes. And there are exceptions for framed works that are not on the walls, kind of leaning against walls in my room. There I have a little more license, a little more leeway to just put up whatever I want. And this is kind of a touch and go process. I can't just do whatever I want whenever I want. Obviously, I have to talk with my wife, and can kind of make a little progress here and there, subtly, not all at once, and then see what she thinks. And it's just that kind of a process. But I think so far so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. I know you both have littles at home, so that's having kids and having a spouse or consideration. But with kids, it is definitely age dependent. I know you both have young children at home, so I'm assuming that the strictness of that will probably change as they get older, right? And they can. It's kind of like the rated G and then the rated PG.
For sure.
PG-13, right?
Looking forward to that. No doubt. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Brenden?
Yeah, so I'd say I'm pretty sure everything I own is on a wall, or at least makes it on a wall. Sometimes it takes a while to find the perfect frame and everything. That's because I sort of have two stages of wife approval process. So first, she has veto power, so if she doesn't want me to get it, I won't get it. I might have, be able to play a card or two, and but I haven't had to do that yet. So generally, if she tolerates the artwork, and if she tolerates it, it can go upstairs in the loft area that I'm sitting now. But occasionally she will even like an artwork. And if she likes the artwork, then it gets to go downstairs where when we have company over or whoever, they can see it. And so that's a big win. Only have maybe how many? Maybe three or four pieces downstairs. Most of it comes upstairs. And then once it's upstairs, for me, I have a big connection to the cards that these artworks represent and the decks that I play them in. So I kind of organize it by wall. So everything behind me here is from my favorite Magic deck. These are all artworks of the cards that either currently play in or at least used to play in my favorite Magic deck at the time. So I have another wall that's similar, not nearly as decked out as this, and then have a couple others just sort of sprinkled throughout.
Well, you need to tell everyone what that Magic deck is, Brenden.
Well, yeah, so of course my face is blocking it, but this is Animar Soul of Elements, so red, green, blue Magic Commander deck, which has been my favorite since I started getting into Commander many years ago.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I definitely I have many Commander decks, but I have a pet Commander deck that I've had Nekuzar. I've been playing Nekuzar since 2013, and it gets pulled every year. And so you can imagine my excitement when there was finally a traditional piece of art for that, because that one had always been digital. So
actually, I think it might be the same story for Animar. I think they were both from the early 2013 Commander series when Commander wasn't that popular, and the original the first artwork for Animar was also digital, and only a few years back was the first traditional one.
I do remember your excitement and I must get this art when that one got spoiled. So first, congratulations for getting it. I know how huge that is.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you mentioned that wall. You said you have another wall that is also themed, right?
That's right. And then occasionally one of my kids will sort of just take a liking to something, and usually it's out of the blue, and I say, "That's awesome." So I usually hang it up somewhere in their room, maybe by the side of their bed or even their crib, depending on the age. And that's been a lot of fun. So, and it's often the ones you wouldn't expect. So let's see. How can I do this? Spell Scout right here. This is the one that was red, white, and blue a few minutes ago. My oldest daughter took a huge liking to, which is my only like horror themed artwork, but she really liked it. And so I also have the black and white version of that painting. So that's hung beside her bedside for many years.
And that's Baxa, right? Baxa art.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Thomas Baxa's work is amazing, and his work is very much in that vein, that kind of darker horror. So that's really funny that she. I'm sorry. It's your oldest is a girl, right? Your daughter.
Yes, her name's Violet. She's 9 at the time.
Violet,
9 now.
So
she was probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So yeah, that is funny that she'd picked that one. But really, and we'll put the art up when we're editing in later. But when people see that art, you can tell that it's his art and it's horror themed, but it's certainly not as dark and creepy as many of his other things. So it is a very nice piece of art. So she has wonderful taste.
It's true, yeah. And she helped with the frame as well. She helped make that. So I'm sure we'll get into more of the frame making soon, but it's really fun to be able to involve her in that process.
That is very cool. Very cool. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned with the art being able to go downstairs, for those who don't know, we call that couch friendly art.
Yeah.
So basically, if somebody says art's couch friendly, it means it's been approved by the family and it can be seen in public. And so a lot of times with magic art, it'll end up being things like lands, right? Like, because they'll be like landscapes and things that don't necessarily look like magic art. I'm in a very different position from the two of you because I don't have kids. And my boyfriend is a comic book artist. So I sometimes forget how many kind of hoops and negotiations other people have to go through in deciding what to frame and what to put up on the wall, because I just frame and put up whatever I want. That being said, I'm sure there is something out there that I could collect that Joe would not want me to put up on the wall. I have not tried to start collecting like, unclothed men or anything like that. If I did that, that might be a problem, but nothing that I have collected at this point has been any sort of an issue. And, definitely we've put, artistic nudity and things like that on the wall as well. I do own, like one or two pieces. Like I have a Rob Ray mermaid painting that's absolutely gorgeous, but she's a mermaid, right? She's not wearing clothes. So we do have some of that stuff up as well, but I don't put those things up in the living room because, even though I don't have kids, I have company, and I try to think about, what people's sensibilities and things if they're going to be coming over. And, but I certainly don't have to think about it to the same level that the two of you do. So huge props to the two of you for navigating that whole thing. So
if I can jump in just quickly, I forgot one piece of the calculus. It's that so I'm pretty sensitive about lighting, in the sense that I just remember like way back when I collected sports cards, I had a signed baseball, and I just remember over the years how much the ink faded, and it just left a mark on me. And I think that sounds pretty intense, but it did. So I think another part of the calculus for me is that like my most kind of like the highest high-end pieces, I just try to keep in a Otoya portfolio, because that way I don't have to worry about it. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are paintings that might be really high value. Those I don't worry about as much, because those, they can stand the test of time. Museums, they deal with it all the time with lighting. Just have the right kind of, I guess, whether it's plexiglass or glass, whatever you use, the right UV protection, those I don't worry about. But for a lot of kind of the ink pieces, for sure, that's part of the calculus where I that's got to thread that needle as well.
Yeah, I certainly want to
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No,
Certainly
go ahead.
want to avoid direct sunlight as well. I've had one or two pieces on like this is the perfect spot. Then there's a window just going straight into it. So in the
Mm.
loft, I've actually gone as far as on the side wall. There's two big windows, and this was less about protection and more about I just hated the glare. So the core hours of the day, there's just glare everywhere on the painting. So I ended up just blacking out the windows. So sorry to my neighbor, but just put up some sticky, just black material. So it's just completely,
He'll think you're
completely
doing
blacked out.
something insidious. You're like, nope,
I
no,
know,
I'm just
yeah.
a nerd. Just a nerd.
Just protecting yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And we'll talk a little bit more about art placement later, but I think, talking about essentially light and UV considerations is important. So we'll just, finish talking about that now. Many people know I used to live in Colorado. I lived at 8,500 feet elevation. So
Mm.
a lot more UV, right? Colorado is like the number one state for skin cancer because just the UV rays are so much stronger there in other places. And I learned when I lived there, I was at a local event and people are trying to get me to buy all these new things for my house. And I talked to a window company and I asked them if they made essentially like museum glass for windows, right? So things that would block UV light. And they said, absolutely, that exists. So if you live in an area that's really sunny, the other thing about Colorado living in the mountains, right? We have a lot of huge windows. It's common practice to not have curtains on windows and things because it's that you want to see what's outside, right? So if you live in an environment like that, or if you live in, Arizona, and you have that same kind of situation, tons of sunlight, a lot of UV, that can absolutely be an option. So I'm not saying go and get new windows right now, but eventually, people need to update things, and that includes windows, and so that can be a consideration. Now, I wouldn't put a piece directly in that sunbeam. I still wouldn't do that, but it gives another layer of protection and kind of helps to reduce some of that stress about that damage, because yeah, things can fade a lot faster than you think they will, and you don't always know when you buy a piece of art what kind of materials they're using, if they're archival. A lot of times with ink pieces, we see fading over time, and it can be in different stages across a piece of art based on the artist having used different ink type mediums on the piece. So good example, if someone uses permanent marker, I won't name like a name brand here, but if someone uses like a black permanent marker to fill in blacks on a piece of comic art, that starts to fade pretty quickly. So like 20 years later, you'll start to see it. So if you see that on a piece, it doesn't always mean it's light exposure. Sometimes it's just literally the time that's passed. But those are all really, really important considerations as well. So so Brenden, you said you pretty much have everything up. Steve, do you have a kind of a pecking order of I'm buying this piece just to have in my collection versus I'm buying this piece to put on my wall? Is that a consideration when you buy art?
Oh, interesting question, Tatiana. I think, I don't really go for pieces in the sense that I think it'll look great on the wall, but sometimes they happen to again check all those boxes I mentioned, and voila, it happens. But yeah, I think in general, uh, it's definitely a plus if it goes on the wall. Also, I tend not to switch what's on my wall too much. If it finds a place, it's there for good. So it is kind of a hefty consideration, all things considered. But then, I think that's my answer. If I can say one more quick thing about the lighting, also indirect lighting. That's another thing. A lot of I think newer collectors are not aware that can also affect your art. So it's just good. Positioning is a good thing. Like a lot of my wall art again is in the hallway, so none of it directly faces light, and even then it's kind of skewed, right? So it doesn't. It's kind of light has to work really hard to get there. And then if you want to take a good look at the pieces, you can just turn on the hallway light. So things like that, just some additional considerations. But yeah,
I imagine
back to your question. Yep.
is that a bigger issue for inks than it is for painted works?
I think in general, like oils are really tough in terms of having endurance against light. So yeah, I don't mind having a really good oil painting on the walls. But yes, for inks, I definitely have to consider the value and things like that. But it's nice to have something on the wall. It's part of being a collector. I'm very much against kind of a stash everything away and never look at it kind of collecting. I think one of the great things about art versus other collectibles and especially investments is that you can enjoy them every day. It's not like a number on the screen, certain investments are, and it's you can really just walk by them all the time. It's harder to do with other collectibles like cards, for example. So I think we should get to enjoy, not get too crazy, not to be too strict about all our conditions, but in the end, enjoy the hobby. Yeah.
You can't walk by and wave at your 401k in the hallway every day.
Yeah, that's yet to be done, I guess. So who knows? There's some crazy people out there. You never know.
I think the other thing with oils and displaying oils is that, oils have been around for a really, really long time. And so there's this very socially acceptable culture around oil paintings being preserved or retouched. I mean, that's, if you have an oil painting, some famous oil painting, and those always undergo regular, cleanings, and they might need to get, devarnished and revarnished. That doesn't hurt the value. I'm a firm believer that it shouldn't hurt the value with art in general, because art's this living, breathing, organic. I mean, literally, it's, if it's on a piece of paper or a board, it's literally organic. And so I think that should always be okay. But that being said, in mediums that are, that we're used to collecting with comic art and things, that mindset hasn't quite changed. So if something it gets restored or fixed up to fix some of that fading damage, some people, not all people, but some people would consider that a reduction in value or something. Same thing with like getting comic books pressed. That's a whole other conversation, but people get like that with comic books as well. And then also, the last thing I would say with it is, we also have mediums like Copic markers, and so many people have been doing not just sketches, but cover work and all sorts of stuff with Copic markers the last 10, 20 years, and we don't know how those are going to hand up still. They might be considered archival, but we don't know in 50 years what they're going to look like. So just doing the best that we can with minimizing that environmental exposure, which includes light, can be really helpful. So there are a lot of different ways to frame art. And I think the easiest, most straightforward way that people can think of is just what we call like off the shelf framing, right? So, I bought this piece of art. It's a standard size, meaning that it's, one of the sizes that I can go into, a hobby store or another store and just buy a frame off the shelf and stick it in there. Have you guys done that? What do you think about that?
I've done that, I think, only two, maybe twice. These were for some, definitely maybe on the lower end of some sketches. One thing I like about some off-the-shelf frames is when I don't know what these are called, but when the corners have some kind of accoutrements on the corners, and that's really hard to do in custom framing, and something you can really only get away with standard stock frames. So I've done that once. Let's see, you can find it. It's over there in the top corner. But yeah, the other time I did it was again in ink, where I also had, it was a sketch where I also had the inks, and I thought, okay, well, let's not spend double on a custom frame. So I just got one of those. But one thing that, at least for magic art, that's been challenging is that a lot of the artists are from Europe, and so standard size no longer applies, right? There's standard sizes in centimeters, and there's really no American standard size that translates.
Yeah, with again, we're different from most of the world, but in Europe, they have a really nice system, the A system and the B system, and that's used in most of the world. And so like an 11 by 17 that we would have in the US, that's kind of our quote unquote standard, like for comic art. In Europe, the standard would be A3, but A3 is not 11 by 17. It's kind of like 11 and a half by 16 and a half ish, not exactly, but it's in there. So yeah, if you get a frame that says 11 by 17 at a US store and you try to put that in there, it's either not going to fit because it's going to be too wide, or it'll fit, but then it'll be too short and you'll have a gap or something on the bottom. So yeah, absolutely, that's a consideration. What about you, Steve? Have you done any right off the shelf framing?
Yeah, good question. I can't, nothing against them. I think, as Reza mentioned, they can be really cool. I Once I got into cahoots with my framer, just haven't been able to get there. Yeah, I just in love with my framer. We can get into that, I guess, later. But it's been so fun to kind of make some choices, customize as we see fit. So yeah, I haven't really. If I got a piece of art in a trade or a purchase that was in the frame that looked good, that matched the art, I think I would just keep it that way though. So there is a bit of a laziness component as well in my framing. So yeah, if it looks good as is, that's great. Off the shelf, doesn't matter. Nothing against them, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a consideration. Like for example, this piece up here, Talisman of Creativity by Lindsay Look. That's the one magic piece. I tried to rotate some different stuff up today. That piece came framed. So it's not uncommon, especially in like magic art. It's not uncommon for artists to have pieces that are already framed, especially if they've already taken it with them on the convention circuit, because they display it in their booth like that. And so I usually keep them like that. There have been a couple that I have reframed, for whatever reason. But yeah, that one's it's a nice, simple, it has some texture on it, but it looks really great with the piece, and I haven't felt the need to change it. So yeah, just because I didn't frame it doesn't mean that I have to. It can absolutely stay like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brenden.
One downside, I'd say that the one downside of buying these stock frames is often the glass is not good quality. So it's definitely not going to be your museum glass or museum acrylic. Might not even be UV resistant. But that said, usually framers you can go in and ask, hey, I just need a piece of glass cut this size, and you can order that and just swap it in.
Yeah, you can make a lot of adjustments, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about framing your own art in a few minutes. But off the shelf can be, it's just like going into a store and buying yourself lunch. You buy yourself a sub sandwich. That doesn't mean you can't take it home and put pickles on it, right? Like it's yours to do what you want to do with now. And there's absolutely, just for everybody watching, there's absolutely no shame in off the shelf framing. It's a great place to start if you're a newer collector, because if it's if you have what we would call kind of quote unquote standard prices for things in the US, or in Europe if you're in Europe, or anywhere else. If you have things that are standard for your area, that can be really, really easy. And it's also, generally speaking, it's the easiest plus cheapest. There are other things that are potentially also inexpensive, but that are not easy. And we'll get into that when we talk about custom, doing your own framing in a minute here. One thing I will say, if you're doing off the shelf framing, when you are looking at the frame and you're looking at the size, make sure you know if the size that you need is the size that will fit in the frame, or if it's the matted size in the frame. So, if you're putting up an ink piece, for example, you're usually going to want something matted with glass, right? So this piece is matted with glass, although that was custom. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But if you want a mat on it, and if it says it's 11 by 17, but that's the size of the frame, it's going to be too big. If you try to put a mat in, you're going to cut a lot of the art off. So just make sure you read that. It always says it on the front with the information on the frame. It'll tell you, this is the frame size, and then this is the art size if you use the matting. And some of them come with a couple different size mats in them, so you can layer them up if you want to have a nice look, or you can use just one or the other. So just make sure you read through that when you get a frame. And if you go frame shopping to buy off the shelf, write down in advance how many frames, what you're looking for, because I can't tell you, like, you forget to do that and you walk in and your mind completely goes blank of what it is that you need to get. So write yourself a little list first before you go in. And a lot of the big hobby stores will have big framing sales. like off the shelf, like frame sales, like 40% off or buy one get one free. So keep an eye out for that too, because then you can get really, really good deals instead of paying $50 a frame.
That's a great point, Tatiana. Especially, you really want to avoid leaving like a portion of the art itself not visible because of some bad batting choice or not getting the dimensions exactly right, because that can really actually like devalue a piece. Because again, over time, the colors will not match up. So you really want all of the art visible when you frame. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So you mentioned your framer, Steve. So let's talk about using a professional framer.
Yes. So there's definitely not a set of hard and kind of fast rules. It's really a trust-based process. I think, first of all, I found Mr. Kurata, Harry Kurata. I don't mean to kind of like give him, I'll give him a big shout out, but at the same time, he's close to retirement. So hopefully this doesn't lead to like a flood of new customers, but he's been awesome. He runs Yoshida, a framing store in San Francisco, the heart of the city near downtown. And it's been a family business, which is always a plus. So he inherited it from his father-in-law. And he's amazing. He really listens to you. He gives good suggestions. He'll just pay attention to all the little details, including we mentioned the kind of glass. In my case, we have a plexiglass, which is great when you have kids because things can drop. Don't want shattering glass everywhere, and it's pretty cost efficient. Actually, I think that's another big consideration. But every single time I've been like, wow, this is it. I thought it would cost more based on other stores experience. But yeah, so I think it is a kind of a really a trust based process. I think once you find a framer like that who's near, again for me, really like maybe a 15-minute walk. You latch onto them. You never let go. It's kind of a rare thing. Yeah, he's been great. I think with him and Brenden actually, we stopped by together once. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I remember he had a bunch of origami of all sorts of animals, and he just dumped half of them to us because for our kids. So these gestures, they're just really nice. And but yeah, long story short, he's efficient, and I think if you give him an idea, he's going to ask the right questions in terms of getting that work of art framed, getting that to fruition. So I think I couldn't recommend him more highly in that sense. Yeah.
Brenden, what about you? I know you do a lot of your own framing, but I know you don't do all of it.
That's true. I definitely don't do all of it. Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had the Harry that Steve does. I did get to meet him once, and that was great. I had a beautiful piece framed, and I agree. I was very impressed with the price there. I live in a slightly different area, so it's that place is a little too far for me to kind of make that my regular. I agree. It's very much a trust thing, and honestly, I haven't really found it yet. I'm jealous of those who have kind of this is my framer, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like quite the opposite when it comes to the custom frames. I'll sometimes drive to like 2 or 3 frame shops and just have to say, yeah, sorry, I'm not going to do it today until I find the right one. So yeah, I still haven't quite gotten that. But to me, it's very overwhelming process, and the feeling of walking away empty-handed is awesome. You come in with your artwork that means so much to you, and you've been toiling and troubling. If you're crazy like me, you've been making crappy PowerPoint mock-ups of different frame ideas and all of this, and then you bring it in, and to leave empty-handed, like it's settled, mm-hmm. It's out of your hand. You made the right decisions. You're happy with things. Is a pretty great feeling. It's not always like that for me again, because sometimes I have to try 1 or 2 or 3 different places. So I've bounced around a lot. I don't know. I just haven't. They're either too far away, so I can't regularly make them, or occasionally they're just too much. Trying to charge $1,200 for like a 10 by 12 frame, and that's not something that's sustainable for me. So yeah, I bounce around. I would also say I will breach this topic that I'm not afraid to go to one of the chain framers. You know, your Hobby Lobby or Joanne or Michaels. You generally. I don't want to actually. I don't want to make generalizations, but I think it can be. You don't know who you're going to get when you go there, so, sometimes they can be very helpful and help you make some of the design choices. But you don't even know who's probably there on any given day. So that is one
Mhm.
challenge with them. Um, but again, I just shop around a lot and play around with it myself. I make a giant mess of the table and feel very bad for whoever has to put all the frame pieces away. But yeah, everyone is just a little puzzle, little project. Um, yeah.
So I won't name names, but there's another collector. So I don't live there now, but I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, just like Steve and Brenden do. And there was a collector who lived one town over from me, who's a good friend of mine. And I kept trying to get him to go to my framer, but he insisted on going to, I think it was a Michael's. I want to say it's like in Concord or something. So it's a little bit easier for you to get to, Brennan. It's in the East Bay, but still not easy, but easier than getting into the city for
Yeah.
sure. But he has one particular person there. So, it's like getting a haircut. And I think this probably is going to be
That's a
probably
great
line up
analogy.
better
Yeah.
for
Wow,
women
great
than it will for
analogy.
men. But like, if
Yeah.
you have like a more complicated haircut, you generally have like your person you go to at a salon. But there are those big, big brand, places that you can go that take walk-ins that have a name, that people know. And a lot of people will avoid places like that because they're worried because it's kind of that walk-in. They're not sure about the quality. But there are plenty of great hairdressers in places like that too. It's just knowing who to go to. So I would say getting something framed in a big box store is not necessarily wrong. You just have to build those relationships and know who you're talking to. Because like any other industry and any other job, there can be people working at a framer. It can happen. Sorry, guys. Ooh, it can happen at like a small framing company too, but it happens more often in the big box stores because they have to hire new employees all the time. You can get people who are new. So, having those conversations and things. So it doesn't mean places like that are off limits. I do know the big box stores like Michael's and stuff, they also will have like framing deals at their framing counter. And so when you go in and you're shopping those on the shelf frames, usually at like the back of that, there's like the framing counter section. So it never hurts to have a conversation with people like that. That being said, when I lived in California, I had an amazing framer. They were actually a pretty large company. I found out, I got to know, the owners and everybody. They did a lot of commercial framing. So like when like a new Marriott or something would go up, they are the company that would frame all the art that would go up in all the rooms and all of the, lobby and everything for the hotel. But they also did, custom personal framing. And my framer there, I had a specific framer who worked for that company. He was a Magic player. And so that was huge for me. In fact, I ran into him at our
Yeah.
LGS, our local game shop, once or twice. And so if I was having a hard time deciding what I wanted to do with a piece, and I'll talk about that process in a second, but he would literally, if he was there, he would come running out from the back because he wanted to see what I brought in that day. And personally, when I take stuff in for framing, I kind of like taking things in fives. So like I'll take 5 pieces in. I like to walk away with nothing. Sometimes I'll bring 6 or 7 and just feel out what's working that day. My process is completely different from Brendan's. I go by feel. I can be in the framer for like 2 hours trying to
Oh yeah.
find, but I don't even mock anything up or give myself any ideas in advance. I just kind of like fly by the seat of my pants. And sometimes you'll find the perfect frame for a piece in 30 seconds. Sometimes there's been a piece where I can't, like, I have Alex Horley's Colagon's Command from Double Masters 2022, and there's a lot of pinks and purples in that. But I don't want a pink or purple frame. Like it doesn't match with that character and that card. And that card it's a powerful like red black. It's like a darker kind of magic card. For those of you who don't play, It's think of it kind of like as a darker magic or chaotic magic. It's not, even though there's pinks and purples in the pieces, it's not, this isn't My Little Pony, right? So
literally what I was thinking about, My Little Pony, but yes.
yeah. So that piece, we were working on it. This was in Colorado, and I'll get to that framer in a second, but like we worked on that probably half an hour, and then we had to set it aside and go to a couple other pieces, and then we came back to it and finally figured it out. There's different challenges with different pieces. That one's acrylic, so it needed a mat and a frame and glass. And so there's more things. When it's oils, I don't frame oils with glass. I don't have kids. If you have little ones at home or other risk of art getting dirty, you can put, it can be a good idea to put glass on oils. Then you need to gap it. We'll talk about that in a second. But so I loved that whole company. I loved the framer. The prices were great. And when I left and went to Colorado, I tried a local framer that was, about as close as you could possibly be to my house. I lived kind of out in the woods. So like once I would actually get down to the main road, that was like 15 minutes. They were right there. She was really nice, had a lot of nice things. And I just kind of brought in one piece. I went through the whole process with her. I picked out like this double matte. It's an ink piece. It looked really good. Even though it's a black and white piece, like I wanted to bring out like, I own multiple Deadpool pieces and things like, and sometimes like with Deadpool, it's an ink piece, but I'll bring like a pop of red in a matte, right, to kind of bring that character forward, that kind of stuff. So it was one of those. It was a different character. It was Aphrodite 9, so like a pop of green. We get it all together, and she's like, "Okay, that's going to be $900," and I just about fell over and died. And she's like, "Oh, and the next time, I'm sure we can do a discount, and if you bring multiple pieces." And I had spent so much of her time already. We'd probably spent like 45 minutes picking it out. So I didn't want to walk away because I felt like, okay, that's a lesson learned. I should have asked about prices when I first got here. She just seemed so nice. So I got that piece framed, and then I just never went back there again. It came out nice, but $900 to frame one double page splash of comic art is insane. And then I got really lucky. There's another Colorado. He was in Denver, this collector. And he mentioned a framer that he really loved that used to be in the city and then had moved out into the mountains, like a couple towns over from where I live. So for me, it was like maybe a 30 or 40 minute drive to him, which, living in the mountains in Colorado, like that's super close. I didn't have to, it was the opposite direction. I didn't go to the city or anything. And then he was amazing, super amazing. I'd bring in 5 pieces, and it would cost me between $1,200 and $1,500. And I know that sounds like a lot, but getting a nice piece of art framed for $300, that's great.
Pretty good.
Yeah. No, that's it. I think that's a target, like $300. Like that's basically like the ceiling for me. A lot of times it's been less. So, but yeah, totally agree.
And then we even had a deal like with my comic art. So I'll go back to this piece again, which is a Ryan Sook Vertigo piece. He knew what I did for a living, and that I've been collecting art for a long time. And so he said if I brought 10 or more, I think it was 7 or more, but we just kind of decided on 10. If I brought 10 pieces in that were all like the same size and the same medium, so basically like 10 comic book covers or pages, he'd frame them all the same, and they were $70 each.
Wow.
And that's
Nice.
Custom. It's not like that's all custom frame, custom mat. I believe those are conservation glass. So I did museum on some of them, but then he was like $100 each. Like, it was hardly any different. So, we had worked out a relationship in that way. So,
that's great.
Yeah, that was very hard. I miss him very much. I have not found a new framer here. But because I have not bought a new home, I'm not getting anything framed right now.
I've definitely been there with that Deadpool story. One thing I try to tell myself is like it's okay to walk away. Like you got to give yourself that freedom. I mean, same if like you're shopping for a car or something. You get in and you start to feel bad. You've taken their time, but at the end of the day, it's got to be something, one, that you can afford. So price is part of it, but two, it's something you're going to be happy with because you're the one that's going to be staring at this every day on the wall. And so if it doesn't feel right, that's okay. Just come back. go somewhere else. So for me, another thing I've noticed about these big box versus kind of mom and pop shop framers is there's really a fairly small number of frame molding manufacturers out there, just distributors out there. So like Larson Jewel is probably one of the most common ones, and so a lot of times the selection is really not that different, or at least there's a large amount of overlap. So to me, and to be honest, this is something that took me probably a dozen plus frames before I really kind of figured out the complexity of a frame, and also probably helped figure it out that I'm building some frames. But not every frame is as easy or difficult to assemble and to really get right. And so, for example, so your talisman in the back, Tatiana, I would say that's pretty straightforward, because it's basically just the molding, right? You just need some good miter cuts, miter joints, and the molding. And actually, at the big box stores, generally they're not cutting the molding. That gets outsourced and by a distributor, and then that gets sent in. So if that's all you need, and if your local framer that might charge $500-$600 has the same molding as Hobby Lobby that charges $150, you're probably fine at Hobby Lobby. That said, if you're doing something more complicated, maybe like a double mat plus a fillet, I mean, I've had fillets come back cracked, the mats come back like not flat, they have like gaps and things like that. So you kind of have to start to learn what is a complicated frame and what is not, and maybe it's worth really going somewhere where you have established that trust with someone for these more complex frames.
I just realized that when I did your introduction, like I totally read that as like steak, and I said fillets instead of fillets, and now I'm like, duh.
I do like fillets as well, but
I
yes, I was talking about fillets.
I'm talking about framing, not steak.
I could use one, but yeah, segueing off of that too, I think an open mind is maybe the most important thing you can bring to a framer, even if you have a long relationship with one. I think it's not available right now, but we can show it on the screen. The Verzetta painting I have, the Mina from Dracula, that was actually not framed by Harry Kurata. It came that way when I purchased it, but it has a kind of, it's like you can see it probably on the screen, but like a little doorway, and you can see Mina, the character there. And I would have thought of matting it that way, like a doorway mat kind of. But it works so well for the painting, especially because the background wise, it kind of fades from white to the masonite, the board it was used. So it's perfect. I would have never thought of it. So I think the open mind is really important. With magic art as well, all our earlier pieces, they're small. In terms of dimensions, they're pretty small. It might look big because it's right in front of the screen now, but yeah, compared to my face, right? They're pretty small. So here, I was just thinking, why not have like a frame where I have two pieces from the same set? I'm sure there are folks who are vehemently against doing so, but it worked. I'm so happy with it. It's not so tough to kind of switch it out again, right? If I change my mind, but yeah. Again, open mind, ask if it works. I was watching, looking at a lot of frames with suede matting. And that was another thing. I was
I'm addicted to suede matting.
Oh yeah.
And I decided, let's try it. Let's try black suede. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's just different from a plain black mat versus a suede black mat. Wow, like it's just like ultra kind of like night, it's just different. So I now am addicted to suede. So, but yeah, open mind. We see people who do this exact same frame over and over again. We had this thing, our
Carl,
little group.
Right, we're talking to you, Carl.
Yeah, no, the
we
white.
love you, Carl.
Exactly.
No, we love you, Carl.
There's a camp with just white frame, white mat, white everything for everything, and we joke. Shout out to Will Larson. We joke that those are great for prints.
Yeah. Nice prints you got over there.
But yeah, like literally. And I call them like sushi restaurant frames, where I just see them all the time at sushi restaurants for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, if that's your thing, cool. But it's good to, I think, framing's fun, right? It shouldn't, if you just do the same thing over and over again, I don't know. I think diversity is a good thing here. So really, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And I think, that's a great point to bring up. And Carl, we love you, and we're totally joking. We're joking. It really comes down, like you were showing the piece you were just showing us. It's your art. it's personal choice. I know people who like all of there are other collectors. I'm not going to start naming people. I can only tease Carl because, he's a friend of the show. And, but there are plenty of collectors out there who maybe it's not white frame, white matte, but whatever it is that they do, they frame everything the same, or they frame everything within a certain color palette so that, it all kind of looks the same on the wall. For that's their aesthetic. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you like. But if you are okay with things being different, just get creative, get crazy, put things together that you didn't think would go together. Sometimes you put a frame, what they do when you go to the frame, a professional framers, you have the piece there, and then all of the samples come in these little corners, whether it's a frame or a mat or a bumper or any of those things, they come in these corners. And you put them up against a corner. And I've had times where I've had literally different ones on each corner of a piece.
Oh yeah.
Trying to see, we'll send photos to like our group chats on Facebook, like which one looks the best. And, so there are people who, like to do things all the same. That's also totally fine. But, if you want to do things that are different and you like to just see what looks good with a piece, get creative. Ask your framer. I mean, they have so many, they'll have things that are out and displayed, but they oftentimes have a ton of other options of things that are available. And so this is a pretty simple one, but this Philip Berberand dragon has like a purple mat on it. That one was pretty straightforward. But I have ones where, there wasn't really a good color match for a mat. So we tried like 5 different things. And then you end up doing like, layering the mats. And so you get like a pop of color on the inside and then like a wider, sometimes you don't want a bright color on the outside. And so, get creative, talk to them about it, see what other kind of options there are. Don't be afraid to, take 50 different samples off the wall. I mean, that's what they do. And it's okay to be in there. Like I said, I'm often in there for a couple of hours. That's okay. That's what custom framing is about.
I can be a bit OCD too, right? So I think a compromise is I like, there's a certain frame I really like. It's kind of a dark, silverish, really dark though, kind of metal frame. So in certain lighting, it can pass for black, but otherwise it's almost a bluish sheen to it. And I can vary up the mats, right? The mats can be all over the place, but consistency with the frame, that's fine too. If you want to take, those baby steps. So just really an open mind. You can do anything. It's a microcosm for life.
I think the last thing I wanted to say about getting things custom framed is, and this goes for whether you're framing your own art and everything too, but when you're getting something custom framed, you want to make sure that they understand that they are framing a piece of original art. What comes in their door most often, what most people are getting framed are prints. Mm-hmm. And most of those prints are not high end, giclée, whatever. Most of them are just, standard prints. And so the way that they frame things standard is they mount them on like a foam core board, and that is permanently mounted. It's like a sticky glue that's on there, and they mount it on there, and then they put it all together. So it's really important to have the conversation with them right away so they know these are the types of things that I'm bringing in. And then ask them, how do you do archival framing? The word that you want to use is archival. And so what they do with things like that, if it's comic book art, so like the Ryan Sook piece, that is not glued to anything. It has the little corner tabs in there, so the art won't move around. So it is secure in there, but it's secured by those little corner tabs. So if I were to take that frame apart, I can take the artwork out. So you want to ask all of those questions when you're going to a framer to make sure that they have an archival process. If they don't have an archival process, run as fast as you can out the front door. They should all have a process, but asking them what that is and what things that they use to ensure that they're treating the artwork properly. Because I have seen many horror stories of people, maybe they went to sell the artwork later or went to change the frame out, and they popped the frame open and the piece of art is glued to a piece of foam core, and they had no idea. And that can be solved by talking to your framer up front. So speaking of considerations and are keeping it archival and everything, let's jump into framing your own work. So Brenden, is what everybody's been waiting for.
Take it away.
Tell us your process.
Oh man, I wish I had a process to tell. It's just I don't even remember the first kind of moment that the idea of the custom frame came to me. But the first one that I did, I actually did two of them pretty much in parallel. But it was Hole Breacher, which you can see over here on the bottom, Hole Breacher by Siddharth. I don't know how to say his last name.
Chattervetti, I think.
Yes, that's right.
That's a
And
piece that Brenden snaked for me. I wanted that one.
well,
Just
yes,
let the whole world know that.
according to my brother, I snaked it from him as well, but we'll see.
You snaked it from like everybody. That was one a lot of people wanted. We can sort of
All's
see
fair
in
in love and
we'll add a
war.
photo later. We can sort of see it, but we can't see it very well.
It's banned now anyway, so I have quite the growing collection of banned artwork, but that's for a different episode. So yeah, so Hole Breacher is made. Oh, actually, one thing is that every time I do a custom frame, I don't know how I got this idea, but I have this tradition where I will keep a 6-inch slice or 6-inch piece of, well, for Hole Breacher, it's the mat and the frame are kind of one and the same, but generally of the molding, I'll cut a 6-inch piece. So for this one, it's just some standard wood. I just showed up at Lowe's one day and just bought some super cheap wood, and then weathered it using some I forget what it's called. My dad had the tools, but some air pressured spinny thing. I think that's the technical term.
Nice.
Air pressured spinny thing, and it just digs into it and weathers it. And we put it all together. And if you look at the shape of this art, and we'll show it on the screen, but if you look at the shape of the frame, it has this odd shape. That was 100% unintentional. The plan was to use a big saw to cut it into a perfect rectangle at the end. And so it just was very random, kind of these jagged edges. And then we finished it. We took a step back and we're like, hey, that actually looks pretty cool. And I was kind of afraid, like I didn't want to touch it again. And so we just left it like that. And now it's kind of this, it looks like the whole piece itself was kind of ripped out of the hull of a ship, which is exactly what's going on in the artwork and goes with the name and everything. So we just decided to leave it. So yeah, so that was my first one. That's Hole Breacher.
So I just wanted to interject really quick. So it seems like the first thing you do when you get a piece before you frame it is you're thinking about the theme, right? What does this card represent? What does it do?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you start building an idea around that.
That's right. Yeah. For me, it's very much about the card and the not just the artwork, but also the card and either what it does or what it means to me. How I'm using that card in my decks, things like that. Another one. This is more of a nostalgia purchase for me, but it's Tempting Worm by Bob Patillo, and this is the frame. This one is intentionally over the top. It's actually, if you look at the cross section here, again, often I just start with just some cheap wood to basically serve as the actual structural component of it. That's the actual frame, and then the rest is really just decorating, honestly. But it's using a half cylinder of foam. This is just like the, what do they call that? EVA foam that you use for cosplay materials. And then on top, it's this hard material called Warbler, which is a thermoplastic, which is also a cosplay material, where if you heat it up, it starts to take the place. So a little bit of Dremel and a few burnt fingers and some cheap plastic jewels from Amazon, we kind of replicated the skin of the worm on that one. Yeah, I mean, it gets pretty crazy. Probably my wildest one and most laborious was for Shared Summons artwork. And this is made out of, it's technically cactus bone, dried cactus. It's called choya. So it's salvaged in Arizona. So there's this seller on Etsy that sold a bunch of pieces, and I paid him a little extra to find extra straight pieces because they're usually kind of bendy and curvy. And yeah, I bought a ton of pieces, and we went through them to try to find which ones actually were straight enough and all of that. And we cut it, and then if you see the cross section here, we kind of routed a little channel. And in here is a sheath that attenuates the LED strip that's underneath. And we also coated the inside, here's a little bit sticking out, coated the inner diameter of this with this material. This is just like what is it called that you put in like birthday gifts in gift bags. And
like a tissue paper?
Yeah, tissue paper, and
Yeah.
that's just so that I bought like 12 different shades of brown tissue paper on Amazon, and just tried them out. They're glued with just a little bit of Mod Podge, and the reason for that is because there's all these holes, and you don't want to directly see an LED. It's just hot. It's just super bright, and so this just diffuses all of that light. So this one was pretty intense, but pretty fun. And then the artwork. I mean, it's not even really a frame technically. It's just a thing that looks like a frame, and then the artwork is just mounted, just floating on top. So a lot of my custom frames are not really strictly speaking frames, depending on how you define it. What else do we have? We have Animar. So this is a piece. Actually, I did nothing to this. This is just straight from Amazon. I do a lot of hunting, but this is a piece of foam, so it's super super light, and I think it's intended to be used for faux doorways, and this is like the corner piece of a doorway, and you can also buy just like the flat pieces, but for a frame it needs to look good from at least two different sides. So that was a pretty fun one, and then we also kind of accentuated it with some pieces of moss that I had foraged in a camping trip with my eldest daughter in Lake Utica. So that was pretty fun. We kind of added a personal touch. By the way, I keep saying we because almost every one of these frames I've done alongside my dad, which has just been it was a really great experience to spend some time with him. I have a feeling that 10, 20, 30 years from now I'll really look back on those memories, building frames with him and just thinking, man, I'm so glad that I did that. And I also really like to involve the family when I can. So for example, this is the frame for Spellskite. It's not shown in here, but this is a acrylic tubing that we sandblasted to, again, for the attenuation, because there's LEDs inside. Anytime you have LEDs, you have to diffuse it somehow. So we sandblasted it, which gives it that kind of frosted look, because otherwise it was perfectly clear. And then we stuffed it with cotton balls. Again, for that kind of attenuation, and in the close-up pic, you can kind of see it's supposed to mimic kind of the energy bulb, and it kind of looks like this bulbous kind of brainy material. And then in the very back is an LED strip. I've also done several frames for other people. So this one is one that I made for the famous Will Larson, or our loving godfather. This is again intended to be kind of a silly, over the top. We call it the candy cane frame. This is for Goblin Rabble Master by Brandy Milne, and this is made from four EVA foam tubes that were twisted. So EVA foam, if you heat it up, it will kind of retain its shape. And then it was dipped in 2-part epoxy. And then this one was so fun to make. The problem with epoxy is that it takes a long time to dry, or to cure technically, and it would also drip. So the problem is it would just start dripping. So we found in my dad's garage, we had these rotisserie chicken machines that's just a little electronic thing that just slowly turns.
Yeah.
So it was slowly turning for about 48 hours as it dried.
Great.
Because it was all this. Honestly, for me, the framing is just like these custom frames. They're just, each one is just a project. I feel like I learned how to work with a new material. I had never worked with EVA foam before. I had never worked with certainly hadn't worked with cactus bone before, but even acrylic and all that. And I learned about tools. Apparently you need very special, very sharp saws to cut acrylic, which is something we very quickly learned. And I just really like, learning new things and learning new materials. Real quick, I'll go through. This is probably my tamest one. This is for Worldly Tutor by Vulcan Bogart. This is just standard, just some exotic wood, but just kind of a normal cut frame, and then kind of did this cat's cradle like effect. Totally cheated by just stapling it in the back. It's not actually a cat's cradle there.
Brenden, I remember you blow torching wood at some point as well.
Oh,
Did
yes,
that happen?
the
Yeah.
blowtorch. I think this is
Nice.
for Fierce Guardianship by Randy Gallegos. So again, cheap wood from Lowe's. You gotta find the straight pieces at Lowe's. A lot of time the raw wood there has bends and bows, but then we just hit it with a blowtorch. So this one was pretty fun. This is actually a Japanese technique. I'm totally gonna butcher the name. It's called shogi bon or something like that. If that is terribly out, we'll cut that out because I have no idea if I'm getting the name right. But basically, you torch it, and it actually provides some good effects. So people do that on fences and stuff. But I just thought it looked cool. It's my only artwork with a bunch of flames in it, so I had to get the blowtorch ready. couple more here. This is another I made for our friend Matt Dennis. Sometimes you can reuse the same idea. This is the same thing. My wife just painted it. This is for his Mosswood Dread Knight. This is one I made for my brother Liam for his Tamio. This is just a standard black frame, but then we got some acrylic. We got this professionally cut. I don't know we don't have a laser cutter or anything, but I made these little symbols in Adobe Illustrator or whatever, and these are etched on. So the symbols are etched, and then this is cut, and then it's attached by just magnets. So we kind of play around with that and move it around.
Sweet.
Let's see. I think
maybe we can get some frames from I know you have making of videos, right, Brenden? Like the making of.
I do. Yeah, I have some.
Get some frames in on the show because it's intense.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I do some time lapses and things like that, or at least make some just make some kind of highlights videos. This is one for an artwork that I haven't really shown publicly, but it's kind of leather wrapped, like fake leather wrapped. It's actually the material itself is like $1 per square foot wall molding from Ace Hardware or something like that. Again, you can get pretty cheap materials. It's funny, a lot of times the custom frames can be much cheaper than the standard. And then lastly, my most recent one is a copper frame for a flip card. This is the only flip card I own, or at least the only one that I own the artwork of both sides, by Raul Vitali. And yes, this was just made by cutting some copper frame and using some copper glue.
It is sweet. Yeah, I've been over at Brenden's a few times and just blown away. And I'm sure I will have the actual frames in the background so show, but just amazing.
So in the process, what do you do to ensure that the art stays safe? Like once you put it all together?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of my custom frames are not technically frames. So if you look at the hydroelectric specimen and hydroelectric laboratory with the copper frame, the frame is not touching the artwork in any way, shape, or form. It's technically just 3 different pieces on the wall, the 2 paintings and then the frame, but it looks framed, right? It's all about just the presentation at the end of the day. So that's one way to do it, is just not actually have it touch. I don't have a 6-inch piece of this one, but Step Through by Randy Gallegos, which you can see on the screen. That one was the one I was a little bit worried about because it's with polymer clay, so I was worried if there would be some outgassing or things like that. So that's one oil painting that I do have glass over or museum acrylic over with some spacers. So yeah, I would say generally, yeah, a lot of my frames are not really kind of real in that sense. So I haven't had to do a lot of, the archival process and things like that you'd normally have to do. Generally, I also only really do it when the artworks are, on like hard boards and things like that, which I just feel so much safer with. I can't recall doing a custom frame for something that was on any sort of flimsy or paper or even canvas material.
I think if you were to do that, you could always get it professionally mounted on something, have it archivally mounted, and then just have like a framer do that. And then you could add your pieces on, or you could mount it yourself if you felt comfortable doing that. But yeah, it's a lot easier like when it's on Masonite or something, right? Because it's already kind of a solid piece.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I haven't thought about getting it mounted from somewhere else. And a lot of times it's half myself and half a professional framer. So, for example, Animar, I built that frame, but I didn't touch the fillet or the matting on there. So I brought that in. I also don't have any way to cut glass, so at least the glass. But what else? This one with Tempting Worm, I built the frame. Rolled this one up to Hobby Lobby and I was like, hey, if I give the frame, can you do everything else? And they said yes. And so it was like $50 or something really cheap. So they do that. I don't have a mat cutter and I don't know that I have space for one. So sometimes it's a joint effort.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good to know. Like you can kind of do your own framing but that doesn't mean that you have to do, A to Z. There's a lot of different variants in there. To jump into your own framing thing, I think probably a lot of people watching are completely inspired and also completely intimidated right now. And so, I want to tell people there's framing your own art is a huge different range of things. And what Brendan's doing is incredible. And that's why I asked Brenden to be on the show, because I wanted people to see that really high level artistic type of framing and how you can really make things super custom. And so that's something you can absolutely do, but you don't have to. And I love that you mentioned cosplay and some of the things that you were making, because in a lot of ways it is like cosplay. I haven't had time to do it in years, but I used to cosplay a lot. And it's the same thing with cosplay. Like, I would design all my own costumes, but I can't make everything myself. I don't have the skills or the time or whatever. And so I would, buy things off Etsy, like you mentioned, or I would have some things custom made, and then I would kind of put it all together at the end. And then there are cosplayers out there who literally make their costumes like from scratch, every single thing. And then there are people who just buy costumes to wear, and those things are all fine. So it's whatever works for you based on your interest, your time, your space, and all of those considerations. One of the things that I've started doing recently, so I mentioned I don't have a framer here and I haven't really been framing stuff, but I have started thrifting frames. So when we go, I'm in Omaha right now, which is the biggest city I've ever lived in my life. It's actually a pretty big city. So there's, garage sales everywhere, every weekend. There are a million antique stores. There are, anything you can possibly imagine. And so we go to these, for fun. And one of the things that I keep an eye out for is frames. And, again, you want to make sure you go with, these are the sizes I'm looking for. These are kind of the things that I'm looking to do. And I've gotten some really nice, clearly custom frames, from as cheap as $3. I think I'll spend kind of up to $10 on something. I might go up to $20 if it's like the perfect and it's huge, if like for like a really big piece or something. But sometimes it's like, I'm not even sure what I'm going to use this frame for, but it's great and it's custom and it's nice. And one tip I will give people is, yes, you can check the section that they have at the thrift shop or the antique store or whatever for frames. But I've had much more luck in buying prints, like framed prints and things that are already framed. And then just, taking whatever's in there out. I don't need it. I can donate it or throw it away depending on what it is, and then just use the frame. And I've actually found much better deals that way. A lot of times with the frames, they're priced higher, which is weird. But with the pieces that are like, framed prints, that they're thinking about how interesting is this subject and does somebody want to buy this? They're not necessarily thinking about someone's going to buy this for the frame. So I think I've bought one frame that was sold as a frame, and every other frame that I've purchased has been that has something in it already. And then so that's a big part of the cost when you get things custom framed is, the wood, like Brenden mentioned, it's the miter cuts, which are essentially, that's those diagonal cuts, and that's how the ends are fit together. And then they're usually like the wood's like kind of stapled together in the back when you see custom frames. So that's usually a big part of the cost. If you go to your framer and ask them, like, what's the price per foot on different types of wood, some of them can get really expensive. So that's a big part of the cost. So if you find a really nice frame, then that's a good starting place. And then from there, there's a ton of options. You can, Brenden said he doesn't have a mat cutter. They're pretty big, but you can buy a mat cutter, and then you can buy whatever color mats you like online. And then it has the instructions on how to cut them and everything at home. You can measure everything out and cut it. Or you can just order mats online. There are websites that you can custom order mats. You say, this is the size art that I have, so this is what I need. They can cut you a single mat. They can cut you a double or a triple mat or whatever you need. They can do that for you. And then also glass. So I have one piece that I had framed that I just tried to stick in like a one of the pieces that I had gotten at an antique store. And the frame is great and the glass is awful. So at some point I will be replacing that. It was a Ashiok piece, trying to replace that with different glass. And again, you can just go online and order. You can go to a framer or somebody local, but if you don't have that or you don't know, you can just go online. And there are websites where you can get custom cut conservation glass, museum glass. You can get acrylic. Steve mentioned acrylic earlier. That's, like more resilient if you have to worry about things getting bumped and all of that. So So there are plenty of places you can get all the different pieces that you need, and then you can just kind of put it together yourself. You'll usually see, well, you should see on the back of a framed piece, it will be covered in like a brown paper. That's to help prevent dust from getting inside. So that's an easy thing that if you're putting everything together yourself, you can just get the brown paper and it's just kind of lightly glued around the edges. So that's an easy thing to do by yourself as well. But so that is really inexpensive by doing thrifting, and it's kind of fun. It is a little bit of that creative process without, nearly that the same level that Brendan's doing. But that's also kind of a fun way to have a personal touch, and for people who are trying to save money, which pretty much everyone is right now, that can be a great way to still get your pieces framed without having to pay a few $100s a piece to get things custom framed. As long as you're patient and you have the time and you kind of want to work on them as a project, that's another thing that I've been doing recently that I think is a fun way to approach framing art as well. So we have one topic left. We've been really going at it today. I can't believe how usually we're done by now. We have one topic left, and we don't want to leave this one out because this is really important. And this one is, how do you decide where you're going to put the art up? That's a big one. If you only have 2 or 3 pieces of art, this can be pretty easy. But as your collection grows, or if you're limited on space of where you can put things, where you can put your art up, or where you want to put it up, or how you want to organize it is an incredibly important thing to ask yourself. Brenden, I know you have a process for this, so why don't you tell us how you do it first, and then we'll go to Steve after.
You mean in terms of layout and how we organize them on the wall?
Yeah.
So actually, this is again, so many people are so different. I know a lot who will just put one up, and the next one they'll just put that in relation, and it grows out. I'm a little bit more, I tried doing some Photoshop mock-ups of that, but man, it just doesn't work because of angles and fisheye effects and things like that. So our friend Jason gave an awesome idea, which is I call it the butcher paper method. But you get some butcher paper, it's super cheap at the store, and you just cut out rough dimensions of each of the frames you have, and now it's just a piece of paper which takes 2 seconds to frame, as opposed to an actual frame which takes 5 minutes if you're as meticulous as I am. So then you just have a bunch of pieces of butcher paper, and you can kind of map it out along the wall. So if you ever want to do a full complete layout, re-layout, so that's what I did when the Animar wall actually had Animar, because for many years it didn't. I wanted Animar front and center, of course, so I started with that one, and then just kind of started building it out. And you can try out new things and iterate much more rapidly when it's just a little piece of paper with some blue tape. So I highly recommend the butcher paper method.
Yeah, that's I like the low tech, because I know people who do the whole Photoshop. They have all the dimensions, they plug everything in there, and you can absolutely do that, but it is not always as accurate, like you mentioned. And also, we don't want people to feel like they have to have that skill in order to lay stuff out in advance. You can literally, cut some squares and rectangles of paper and just stick them up on the wall, and then you can move them around as many times as you need to.
Exactly. I just shove them under the couch now, so if I ever want to do a reshuffle, they're right then and there. Yeah, I was surprised. Actually, I had some fun with it too. If I recall, I would get a Sharpie and give myself a 30-second timer to draw like a really, really crappy picture of the artwork in there, just to make it more fun.
That is very fun. So Steve, tell us what you do.
We joke in terms of shoving things around. We joke our friend Larry Tunn uses FedEx boxes to store art, just place them wherever he wants. But yeah, in my case, I think it worked out serendipitously. So I mentioned the Fresno painting. It's huge. It's like 18 by 24. The frame is huge as well. So I looked at the wall. Again, the hallway leading into the living room. I just put it right in the middle of the wall, and then radiate out some other pieces. So I'll show a picture, but it's literally center, and then one kind of northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, and it works out like and it's vaguely symmetrical, and I think it's just a way of making things work, going on the fly really. So that worked out. Again, avoid direct sunlight, avoid indirect sunlight to the extent possible, and just go with the flow. And I think it's in terms of kind of like configuration, I don't really care. I mentioned kind of the having consistent frame for the pieces I frame myself, but otherwise, there's the Jeff Easley, the Rainbow Dragons piece is his own kind of crazy kind of ridged white frame, and then we have Nath. The matting is kind of gold because it's a legendary, and we know the old legendaries in Magic had kind of the gold borders. So playing off of that, and then we have a piece of comic art from Venom, Tom Lyle, and that's fun because kind of the matting is white. It makes comic art look a little bigger than it actually is, having a bit of a white mat and then a black border. And then last but not least, going to put up a new frame at the southeast corner. Jim Lee, probably Psylocke. But in any case, yeah, it just works. And I think if it's your own art, you stop caring if it has to look perfect on the wall, right? As long as the one thing I'm OCD about is having it relatively kind of straight, right? Like you don't want it crooked, a bunch of pieces looking crooked, and you can get away with that. What do they call those? The little
level?
Yeah. You just kind of put it on top of a frame, and it'll kind of adjust. It'll show you how to adjust the
with a little bubble
position. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the bubble.
Yeah, level.
Exactly.
Yeah,
level
yes.
or bubble level. Yeah,
those are a must. You do kind of have to detach yourself at some point. So you can get a little crazy with being perfect about them, but yeah. So I think that's basically it for me.
Brenden can just start building frames with levels on top, like
There
built
you go.
in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Hey, I dug under the couch and found one. Let me back up a bit.
That's
So
shared
this is
summons. I can tell immediately.
Oh wow, that is.
This is like.
I'm so
like,
glad you can tell. This is
like
shared summons
like
by
caveman
Brendan
painting.
Peterson. It's not quite as good as shared summons by Aaron Miller, but anyway, yes, this is all it takes.
And the 30-second drawing isn't required, but that's super fun.
It's true.
Highly
recommended, but not required.
Yeah. So Steve, you were talking about, again, with the lighting thing. I just wanted a couple things I was going to say earlier that I forgot. Basically, if it's a place where you would put a plant, you probably shouldn't put art there. Because, plants either need direct or indirect sunlight. So if you're putting a plant there, you probably shouldn't put art there. And if you have an area that's darker, like a hallway, they make, when you go to a museum, you see that special lighting that's over paintings, and you can buy those. It's just kind of like a bar, and it hangs over and you plug it in. And so if you have, I wouldn't do that like for every piece I own, but if you had like a piece that you wanted to highlight, like maybe at the end of a hallway, or, something that has like a special location that you want people to really be able to see, you can get the special lighting as well. So there's a lot of ways you can play around with lighting while still keeping the artwork.
Yeah, I'd say lighting probably deserves its own episode. It gets very complicated, but my quick thoughts on that is that I played around. I tried to get some track lighting in this room. I ended up just kind of ditching the whole idea. For one reason, track lights hang down, and the problem that I was having, because some of the art gets closer to the top of the wall, is you see the glare. You see the light source itself as a hot spot, and so I'm really fighting vertical distance, and so that track lights. I lost 10 inches worth because that's how low it hangs down. And so I went away from that. I ended up just getting really nice quality can lights, just recessed can lights with a high CRI, that sort of thing. When I am going to experiment here with these spotlights. This is a zoomable spotlight. So if you can rotate here and it will kind of shrink or open up how much of the area is focused. So when I have kind of individual pieces like along the hallway, they're a little bit more isolated. So I'm going to play around with these spotlights. So.
Yeah, I love the idea of the can lights. That's what I was going to say. I think would be ideal as well. Obviously, like you need to own your own home and be willing to do some of that work. Especially if you're building them in. But the ones that are built into the ceiling are fantastic because then you can. Those are usually made so you can turn them different directions, and a lot of them are you can get the lights that you can change the brightness, or you can get warm versus cool, and so there's a lot of different things that you can do. Just with that lighting, but there are ways to make things look nice, like the spotlights you have. You don't always have to necessarily change the lighting in your entire room, but I love the idea of that because that's really gonna allow you to light from the ceiling all the way down to the floor that way. So for me, when putting art up, I wish I had some like really great like method. I don't. I'm one of those people like I want to put this thing here. I think it'll look good here. And then I start playing around. I'll bring other pieces in and start playing around with where I want things to be. And, I've moved kind of a lot the last, couple of years, last handful of years. So I've been able to do that a couple of times. But last time when we moved to Colorado, I had so much art to put up on the wall. And so I just kind of started with my office, and I started with a big piece, one of my Jeremy Wilson Witcher covers, and just as a big piece. So kind of, I want it here. And then I was able to build, smaller pieces around it, kind of like laying floor. This is the focal area. So you put the first tile there and then you work around it. And so I don't have a really, good method. I'm one of those, does it look good? Does it not look good? Does it look right? I don't make sure things are centered on the wall or anything. I just make sure that they're not tilted, like you mentioned, Steve. But that's just how I like to do it. And so all of these things they're all right. It's just whatever you like. If you really want, to do the whole wall method, and I'm going to have to do that eventually. When you want a whole wall to look good, you really have to lay it out, because it's, look at all the different pieces behind Brenden. They're all like slightly different sizes, different orientations. Trying to get that to look right on a wall is a lot of work. I know, like Mark Aronowitz, his walls are very packed full too, and that's got to be a ton of work.
Ceiling to floor, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think when you're doing something like that, it requires a little bit more planning and effort in that way. I know your brother is really good at kind of planning things out as well. Like he just did his whole, he's got the stairwell going down, and he redid that whole wall and everything. So, cause he just, moved into a new place, last year? So yeah, no right or wrong. It's just, these are all, great tips for, for how to organize things. And the butcher paper thing is genius. I've been meaning to do it. I just haven't been in a position to need to do it yet.
I think totally get where you're coming from, Tatiana. I think with this entire kind of the framing process, I think it's as close as it can get to being creative for us.
Yeah,
because most of us don't have a hand in actually making the art itself, right? So
right.
I think it's have fun. That's really it. Just whether you're making the frames or whether you're picking them out or batting, coloring, positioning, how to order them. I think it's really kind of as creative as it gets for us. So as you said, Tatiana, time and time again, no right or wrong. Enjoy it. And yeah, it's like the joy of life that we see when Brendan's talking about his frames, right? Things like that.
I agree.
It's
mean,
really,
yeah, it's like as much variation as there is in the artwork itself, there's going to be variations in framing and in how you go about it. And it really is just this truly kind of personal, almost intimate kind of thing. And, for me, that's why I like the custom frame so much, is I feel like that's me like spending time with the art and appreciating it. I don't feel like I'm an art expert at all. I feel like I'm a fraud in that direction, in that sense. And so but at least like I really get to spend time with it and appreciate it and notice all these details and notice all the color, because I'm going back and forth between my frame and this artwork. And I'm sure some people look at it and they're like, that's ridiculous. It's taking, I hear, the phrase like, oh, it's taking away from the painting. Maybe not, but I don't know. It's fun and I like it, and it adds some meaning to me. And yeah, it really just, that's how I spend time and kind of get close with the artwork.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like we said, it's your artwork. Who cares?
Yeah,
if somebody
exactly.
else thinks it takes away from it, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you think. I think the very last thing I'm going to say is for those people who are thinking about financial implications of things. Other than keeping the artwork safe, archival, all that other stuff, don't think about the financial piece beyond that. Because, other than, not budget or whatever, but don't think about future financial implications, because framing a piece of artwork in your collection is never going to add value to it. And because I've had people ask me this, well, it's professionally framed. Great. That doesn't, look, I've sold pieces that are professionally framed. I've bought pieces that are professionally framed. That does not affect the price at all. So the money that you're putting into framing is just to keep the art safe, but also enjoyable for you. And, don't think about what the next person might want or any of that kind of stuff, because that's completely irrelevant. So, yeah. So just wanted to note that, because people think about the financials of things, and that's not, it doesn't matter. No one cares you spent $300 on your frame. It doesn't make it worth any more money. So there's a good chance they're going to reframe it when they get it, because they want something different anyway. Well, thank you both so much for coming on today. We had a really good time. We definitely talked a lot longer than I thought we were going to, but this has been a phenomenal learning experience for me. I think people are really going to have a good time watching this episode. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Brenden and Steve, for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of All Access Art next month. Take care, everyone.
Thanks a bunch, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.